Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining our webcast today. We've got people still logging in, so we'll get started in 30 to 60 seconds. Please stand by. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you're tuning in from. Thank you for joining us for this product update webinar where we'll focus on the Connectbase Buyer Cloud. I'm Derek Granath from Connectbase Product Marketing, and the Buyer Cloud is a key element of the Connected World Cloud platform that automates and accelerates how service providers of all kinds source, manage, cost, and buy connectivity services to meet the needs of your customers. I'm joined today by Carrie Ferraro, our Senior Director of Sales Engineering and Customer Success, and she'll walk us through many of the key features and functions of the Buyer Cloud. But before I hand it over to Carrie, let me go through a few housekeeping items. All right. By default, you're muted, but we do want to hear from you. So please use the chat window to post questions, and we will try and answer many of those questions as we go along, and we'll cover some at the end as well. I want to remind everybody that we are recording this session, so you'll be able to view it again, and maybe more importantly, pass it on to a colleague from your organization that might benefit from the content here. Definitely please share it with your colleagues. And so to start, let me first provide a high-level overview of the Connected World platform. At Connectbase, we're working hard to simplify and automate how you buy and sell connectivity. It brings intelligence and automation into every network buying and selling activity. And a key base of the platform is a best-in-class location intelligence. We call it location truth, for over 2.4 billion locations that are updated continuously. And location truth includes address information, latitude and longitude, the footprint of a building, the square footage of the footprint, plus the number of stories, the tenants, whether it's a commercial building or a residential building. And again, this is the basis. And then that is correlated with all of the different connectivity services that potentially service that location from all of the various providers. And it allows us and it allows you to automate critical network buying and selling, from planning to selling to costing to quoting and to finding and buying. And what this does is provide great efficiencies, but also expands the ecosystem of buyers and sellers. And we believe Connectbase is creating an industry standard. So for today's session, we're going to focus on the Buyer Cloud that helps you find the right connectivity partners by location, manage those partners, optimize and store product costing rules, automate your ability to reach out to new potential partners, obtain real-time quotes, and automate the ordering and market buying. And if you think about how this has traditionally been done, it's been done through a number of varying disparate tools, sometimes taking weeks or even months to put together a potential bid. And with Connectbase and the Connected World platform, you can turn those weeks or months into days or even hours in some cases. And so with that, let me hand it off to Carrie, who will walk you through some of the features, functions, and benefits of the Buyer Cloud. Carrie?
Thank you, Derek. So good to be with everyone today, and excited to be presenting on the Buyer's Cloud. Make sure you guys can see my screen. Derek, can you confirm everybody can see real quick for me?
Yes, I can. I had to unmute my mic, but I'm seeing a map. I'm seeing a map view, or that's the
Perfect.
satellite view.
That's what we want. Okay.
All right.
So it all starts with visual, right? Everybody is looking for network. We're looking to see who's in what building. How are we going to serve that particular building? When we think about the things we're solving, we know that speed to market, the ability to get a proposal out the door and in front of an end customer is your best path to win. Secondarily, we need to be able to buy with confidence and make sure that we lower that fallout rate, which could come from many things. Validation. If we don't have validation, we're not going to match with carrier network. We're not going to make connections. Therefore, we're not going to be able to overcome, a proposal process, that ability to bid and get a proposal in front of the end customer. That's fallout. Fallout can also be from a customer of ours not having the right relationships in play to get coverage that they need. So when you receive that RFP or quote request, your inability to fulfill that RFP or to have locations that maybe don't have serviceability or vendor connected. Our job's to go out and help you find that, understand those connections, and it all starts with network intel. The ability for us to provide really important information like telco, cable co, broadband carrier data, which really is FCC driven in this view. That's really important for our marketplace. And then the network providers tab, where we source over 11,000 carriers around the globe. We're not a US driven company, but a global thought process. We're out there collecting data. We're looking at it from a provider perspective. We're out there looking at IP tracing and things that allow us to elevate the conversation, knowing that a carrier is there, knowing that someone is accessing fiber against a Wi-Fi access point or mobile against a Wi-Fi access point, if you will. We're looking at fiber permit pools. We're looking at all kinds of data sources to kind of pull that into and elevate the accuracy of the carrier and the network understanding at any given building. Is it 100%? No, this is a hard thing to do, but we're not just relying on the provider. We are elevating the conversation, bringing insight, and really trying to bring a confidence level in the buy process that's going to help you eliminate that fallout in the end. You'll see the various carriers, suppliers that you could work with. You may have relationships with these guys already. We'll talk about that in a moment. But being able to see a snapshot of who's in a building and who's nearby. So many of us do rural markets. We have quotes that come in for a rural market, and it's hard to source connectivity in a rural market. Connectbase does a really good job at looking at small local regional providers, not just the big guys, but the small local regional providers that are actually the last mile provider and can help you, again, serve landing and eliminating that fallout, being able to push out that bid much quicker. This is going to elevate that conversation. Ultimately, network intelligence is going to look at all carriers we can see, as well as any that you bring to the platform. If they don't exist and they're your partnership within your own proprietary instance of the software, if you add that carrier, it's going to show in your view. It's going to become a part of your reality here. So that's huge. When we look outside of this, we start to get into supplier management. The most important thing we can do is manage those suppliers and have controls over the relationship, right? You're buying, you're reselling the product. The goal is to buy with confidence first. So we're working with the connection and the carrier, as well as the rates coming in. We want to make sure that those rates are your negotiated MSA approved rates to go to market with. That's a very important part of the process, and that starts in supplier management. Suppliers come through the platform in many ways. Think about the products they're selling. You may buy various products from different carriers, but not all. The importance of how they're coming in will really drastically change and improve the process on the back end. Everybody's very familiar with what we call internal APIs. Connectbase is all about scale, and we're about standing up for every carrier we can an API that can scale for the buy side of the market. Meaning when you have 100 locations or 500 locations or 30,000 locations that you need to process, we want to make sure that we can hit the carriers internally, scale with that, make sure that we can hit all the terms and products that you are requesting and be able to return a quote with a low amount of fallout with speed. We are doing that in milliseconds on internal APIs. So the benefit of being a Connectbase customer, right, is that those in the ecosystem have internal APIs, and those are the best way to access and to do it with speed and confidence. The external APIs are third-party carrier APIs. If you take your big guys like an AT&T, Lumen, Windstream, you look at all the ways that they are selling. If you look at a Verizon, for example, you're using your API credentials to get into that API to leverage your MSA preferred rates, right? And those rates are coming back. That's an integration that Connectbase does and has done at no cost to you, allows you to leverage that carrier instead of having to log into a portal to access their rates. Those credentials get those MSA rates and pull them right into your process, allowing you real-time updates from that carrier. The difference with an external versus internal Connectbase manages, we make our own limitations on that, which means if our whole sole goal is to scale, we're doing exactly that. We're focused on being able to run quotes and allow our customers to scale, to get to market with speed, to be able to get the answers they need in front of them with speed. When it comes to carriers, it's a little bit different. They all have their own limitations, regardless of who integrates to that API or what platform you sit on. You're looking at their limitations. You can still access them, but it comes back at the rate in which it's able to come back. So it's going to be a little bit different experience than you have on the internal APIs. Both are important. And then lastly, most important is that we close all the gaps. We don't want you to have to swivel chair to an email, to a phone, to anything. The goal is that we close all gaps on quoting. And when we don't have a carrier that has automation capabilities, we want to automate through importing building list or enabling a building send through a cloud connection from one customer to another. So your ability to bring a carrier to the table and import that through a simple import process, or to be able to load a rate card for that carrier because you have specific rates you want to adhere to. It's a very simple thought process for your supplier management. You now have controls. You're receiving all your vendors in one location, one place, and you're able to tag and flag them for MSA approved. Yes, you have an agreement with them, and even look at things like, are they preferred supplier? I have 100 carriers I work with, but only these 10 I do 80% of my business with, so they are preferred suppliers. That's really important because that's going to elevate the results. That's going to elevate the conversation when you receive all the results in the quote process. It's a very important step. At the end of the day, it's also equally as important that you can manage your suppliers from, are they working, things are great, or do I need to suspend them from quoting until we resolve things? If a carrier is not working correctly, you have bad pricing in there, or something's not working, you may want to suspend them quickly so that your sales team is not accessing, or your partners are not accessing that rate. You don't want your sales team in there accessing rates that are not valid for a particular carrier. You can suspend them very quickly. And then ultimately, once you work it out, you can go enable them back into the view. You are in control of this. You don't have to wait for a pro services or support ticket. You can absolutely come in, suspend, enable, and even blacklist if you have decided not to work with a carrier any longer. I'm going to stop there for a moment, just see if we have any questions. And please, if you do have questions, make sure you're typing them in the chat so we can answer as we go along. Derek, any questions there?
I don't see any questions yet, Carrie.
All
Please
right.
carry on. No pun
Perfect.
intended.
So that's supplier management. Think about the ability to get into product catalog, thought process, and that supplier pricing. Supplier pricing is really important, that you have the abilities to come in to select your supplier, that you can manage name conventions or rates, or if you have a supplier coming in with final pricing that you know, and if for a fact 90% of the time is going to adjust their rate, you might want to come in and change the disposition on that supplier to budgetary. Again, you have controls. It's your platform, and the goal is to make sure that it's working for you, not against you. We want to streamline the process. You can quote suppliers across multiple channels. So if you're running wholesale market, or if you want to get into and you're reselling into the channel market, right? You might have different rates coming in, and you might have a secondary thought process on your business, not just buy, but you might be reselling. That's okay too. We're going to support all of that through the multiple channels, through multiple price books, and then into that seller's model, which we're not going to get into today. Suppliers come in with a cost. That's the key thing. Everything starts with costing. What is my cost to buy the circuit from my particular supplier or carrier? The goal then is generally, can I apply margin or financial rules over the top so that I have a final thought process? Connectbase allows a very simple thought process here, and we also allow a very granular, complex thought process. If you're looking at something simple, you can run a margin the same off of all carriers by just Xing out of the supplier, not picking a supplier, and then adding margin. You can select on the left side your products, go in, put in an amount, and then choose if that's a dollar or percentage. I know that's not how most of you work, but it's capable, right? If you're at the per carrier level, then you can go select your particular provider, and you can select your products, and you can add your margin even down to the speed level. If you want to get into a more advanced thought process of ceilings, floors, and things like that, you can also start to come in and write your conditions and what you want to happen from a financial standpoint, allowing you to create or even override a value if needed. This is an area that's underutilized in the platform by many that are quoting, but the reality is you all have to mark up. You're all responsible for marking up so you can go to the market and resell. The question is, do you spend a lot of money doing that on your own, or trying to manage that when you get it into Salesforce or into your Dynamics, instead of having a nice, easy path to do, to presenting that to you, and then you making the decision of how you want to present it to your sales team, right? Or how you want to go to market with it. Our goal is to automate and make it easy. So whether it's simple or complex, we want to support both options. Any questions on margin management or financial rules thought process?
Just one quick question, Carrie.
Sure.
It sounds like Buyer Cloud is just for managed service providers, but do network operators and data center operators also use and benefit from Buyer Cloud?
Great question. When I think of Buyer's Cloud, I'm thinking of who is going to buy a circuit. I'm not thinking of just managed service providers, but you may be an operator who also has to source type 2 to overcome no bids and fallout, right? That's absolutely the case. You might be a data center who also is sourcing connectivity and reselling it within the data center. Absolutely anybody who's buying connectivity can join the Buyer's Cloud. Flip-flop that to Seller's Cloud. Anybody who sells connectivity, resells connectivity, or wants to sell their services in the platform or out to the market is also eligible for the Seller's Cloud. Hopefully that makes sense. Anything else there, Derek?
Not at the moment.
Perfect. So what better to top off your suppliers, your margins, than being able to manage your rules? everybody has, what we call business rules or vendor selection rules or equipment rules or disclaimers that you want to go put on particular quotes. When you have, 20 to 100 carriers that you work with and you receive all those results back, it's very hard to manually decide what is the best option to move forward with. And that's the old school methodology, right? We would go to a spreadsheet, we would swivel chair into emails, and we try to compile it together and figure out how it meets our criteria and what's going to be the best option forward. But Connectbase is giving you the tools to allow that logic to be built and managed by yourself inside the platform so you can drive success. If you wanted to go drive, let's say, a lowest cost thought process, for example, you could go in and create a rule that gives a condition, and it could be at a per supplier thought process. It could be at a product level. It could be multiple things that you include in this rule set. But the idea is that you apply a condition, and you can do that across categories, product IDs, MRCs, site identification. Think of all the things, terms, upload speed, download speed. There's all kinds of conditions that you can actually create to say, if this happens, then go do this, right? And so in this case, adding pricing criteria and saying, hey, please select the lowest cost option here. This is most important. Or to go in and say, every time broadband quotes, I want you to add this disclaimer on the quote. So you can go in and you can choose rules that have disclaimers or add a note to the actual quote. Lots of flexibility here. Most don't use user groups very well today. It's a fairly new concept, but we heard our customers last year at our summit when they said, I can't eliminate enough from my view for it to be simple for my users. And we heard you. So we went back and we built this whole thought process around user groups that could select and choose what each user group sees, or having multiple groups be able to run different thought processes inside the platform. Imagine your direct sales and an indirect sales thought process, right? You have your SCs from a buy side standpoint that might get involved and try to put bids together, right? There's all kinds of different groups that would work in this space, and being able to build those out and then really rely on your rules to drive the functionality that you want or the view that you want is key. Vendor selection is going to be the number one thing that saves you time to market. Most don't know this, but the average quote size based on the couple years that we've really been tracking this in Connectbase is 26 locations, 2 products, 2 terms, and at least 2 speeds. That's the average quote size. That average quote size takes the typical business outside of automation a week to turn around. At least a week without automation. Okay. On a large deal like 30,000 locations for something like a Dollar General, when someone's just sourcing one product, that is a very long sales cycle. The average is 9 months to turn that around in our system, not in our system, sorry, but without our system, if you will. And with our system, 3 days to turn 30,000 locations around with vendor selection, with, hey, here's the best top 2 that you want based on your business rules, with margin applied. That's huge. That's a time saver. Who wins in the market, right? The one that has the best opportunity to win is really the first that can put a proposal in front of that end customer. That they have the best. It's about 65% win rate just being the first. But to be able to, yes.
I was going to say there's 2 questions that are kind of related to what you're just talking about. And if you want to finish your thought, then hand it back to me and I'll ask the questions.
Jump in. Let's go.
Okay, so the first one is, can I automate these quote requests to multiple network providers?
Yes. So it's a one-to-many thought process. So you're Our system is looking at your supplier manager and saying, here's 100, carriers you're connected to. But when we get in the quote process, it's going to be one request, and it's going to go out to all your suppliers, and it's going to do that with that one call and come back with a single response with all of your options. So yes, the value is that we are the aggregation point. We manage all that development for you, and it's all speed, right? In that return, we check serviceability, product, and price. Return.
All right, and then there's a comment, or maybe it's a question on your presentation here. I noticed your tree has a few different options than mine does. For example, rules and CPQ rules.
Yes. So that means it's either a user setting or something that you don't own as a business. So you want to work with your sales rep and your CSM to figure out what you have, how you could better utilize the platform. And also, does all your users have the right settings? Do they have the right capabilities? For example, CPQ rules, you wouldn't want just your sales team or just anybody in there messing with. Somebody from an admin perspective is going to own that, who owns maybe pricing, for example. So there's different levers we can pull, but think of privilege first. And then, is it something that you guys own from a business perspective? You would have to have, CPQ thought process to get into rules and to be able to apply margin, things like that.
And another one just in. Are the rules able to be leveraged via API as well, or just within the UI?
Ooh, good question. So I think we are still UI driven on the rules. I could be wrong about this, but I'm going to, whoever asked that question, I will double check that, because I know we're working through a lot of the capabilities through the API. The great thing is you can trigger any rule that's created from the API. So when we get into our advanced CPQ API is the API you would need for quoting, costing, pre-qual, thought process. You can absolutely leverage or trigger any of your rules that you have set using that API. So I will come back with that answer for sure to whomever asked it, but I don't think so. Anything else there, Derek?
That covers it for the moment, but it's great to have these questions. And of course, chime in, anybody out there in the audience, if you've got some questions for Carrie.
Yeah. Rules and margins are the path to making your process so much easier. Imagine you have a supplier that continues to not be able to deliver on their SLAs. That's a problem. And you may have an MSA with them. They may be a preferred supplier, but we're going to elevate that conversation. And ultimately, we're going to help try to get that carrier resolved quickly, because at the end of the day, you're all customers of ours. We want to make the transacting of business easier and trusted. And ultimately, we want to make sure that your preferred providers are promoted, but also those carriers that you don't know are there are elevated in a way that you can now overcome fallout or no bids that you would have maybe lost to someone else over. I'm going to jump into the quoting. So quoting is instead of the my quotes, you now just see it simple terms quoting. You'll see accounts, quick quote, WIP, and projects, and then bid manager below. Accounts is really where it starts. If you're looking to, if you're looking just for, hey, I need to see whatever's in this building or set of buildings, quick quote is a great path for that. It's not going to ask you too many questions. It's not going to get into account information. It's really great from a very pre-sales thought process. If you're looking to really capture account, deal information, network intelligence, rules, and all the fun stuff that's baked into it, the accounts is really the way to go. This is available API as well, but it all starts with your particular, your account and then your deal. So your ability to go add a deal, I'm just going to type something in here. And then most of you are probably not aware, a recent release allows you to import up to 2,000 locations at a time. and it will automatically batch those for you. So it has a nice batching capability. It'll break that into the 500 for you. And there's more enhancement going on around that to date. But it's a nice to have. You can download a template and upload those locations. This is a preferred method if you're looking at things like needing the ability to run, a ID system off of your locations. IDs are needed when you're reconciling or you're bringing in information from another platform. Those IDs to stay intact with the entire quote process are going to be really important. That's where you leverage your template. If you're running multi-country quoting, you can use country codes to focus and push how the system's going to validate, how it's going to look at a location, run that validation, and then ultimately how it's going to match up with your suppliers. If you're running quotes for new construction, hard to reach addresses, hard to validate addresses, or even towers, lat long, being able to quote off of a lat long is your way to go. If you're running A and Z locations, you can do the same thing off of lat long or even address. The template provides a lot of flexibility and really just that additional information that will flow through the quote process. However, if you are most customers, you don't want to have to deal with templates. You can simply copy and paste your addresses in. If you're running a point-to-point, you could do the same thing on your A and Z and it'll clip those together. But the goal is to make it super simple for you guys and run that great validation process that we have, where we're out there doing a multi-checkpoint thought process. We're looking at our data store first, making sure we've built location truth on that location. When we can't find it, we're looking at all the other sources that we have. So we're stepping through these various things, not just one checkpoint like most platforms, but we're looking at multiple ways to eliminate validation issues so that we can start that lowering of the fallout issue that would happen in the quote process. So there's a lot of value there. You can load up to 500 locations at a time. Again, if you're doing more than 500 locations at a time, then certainly use the template and let it start to break it up for you, and you can start your batching process. Once we get our locations validated, we can import those, and the system's going to do a couple things here. We're going to get into the quote, but it's also running the network intel, so you can export that data here. Get to that real quick. So this view is going to import that ID system that you had. It's looking at the locations. And if you have, for example, a need to bring in the LAC cable co information, if you need to know wire center information or the on-net providers on a pre-sale thought process, this is a quick way to leverage that. Most are going to leverage network intel on the fallout side. So after the quote's done, being able to come back and focus on just the ones that had fallout to say, hey, who is here? How can I overcome this fallout? This is a great thought process for you. Also available API. We're going to get into the quote piece real quick and give the quote a name or number. So the quote categories can be limited to what you quote. A lot of people don't know that, but if you have a bunch of stuff in your view that you don't care about, make sure you talk to your CSM or support. We'll be happy to change that view. But this is representative of what you are out there quoting and what you care about. You can label it what you need to, but ideally the goal is that you are, focused. If you quote broadband, if you're quoting DIA or a switched Ethernet thought process where you can have multiple levels of COS, it's all available here. You can have the ability to go in and select from your rules. So any of those rules you had, put in place, you can select. You can say, hey, this is a fiber first thought process. I'll look at copper second. I'll look at coax, HFC next. I'll look at fixed wireless last. So you can have that rule structure and just go select the rule that says broadband vendor selection. And there it is. It's going to work for you and look at lowest cost as your last option because that's the rule you put in place. Very simple thought process there. If you're only focused on carriers with on-net services, you could also select that rule to default there. Being able to select multiple access mediums, multiple product speed options, this is really important. Most systems are not going to be able to manage the load that this is going to cause when you take 500 locations and you start to build all these products and speeds off of it. Now, important is being able to have the best quote thought process, right? So yes, everybody has limitations. There's scale issues everywhere. Our goal is to consistently push the envelope and try to evolve and stay ahead in the industry when it comes to scale. So a lot of work going on with that. But for best results, if you are out there quoting broadband, for example, use the min or max speed for upload download as a target speed. So if I have a target of 100 megs, for example, this is where I want to sit. I want this to be my target speed. You can do the same thing with your upload speed here if you wanted, but the goal is to check this box for alternative. The alternative option is going to go and tell the system if 100 megs is not available for one carrier, make sure to go after the next speed that is available. This is huge. It's not going to create fallout. It's going to look at the next speed until it can't find anything there. New enhancement coming will be, excuse me, that the target speed actually looks at the one speed higher, and it's looking at the next lowest speed as well. So that'll be a great add to the system, because now broadband's going to limit how many calls we are actually making, and it will allow us to bring back more targeted results and focus the rules on that target speed option. This is big for when you're in a rural market. Again, it's hard to reach. You don't know this carrier is there with the 100 megs. They might only have a 10 meg in this particular location. Even though your 100 meg is your target, it's going to go look for the lowest option or the next option down, as well as that next option up, to make sure that we meet the requirement. So that's coming very soon here. But for now, the next highest and the alternative is the way to go on broadband. So sorry. Take a little water break here real quick.
And I don't see any new questions, Carrie.
Perfect.
So you may continue when you're ready.
Thank you. So sorry. The other option is range. So you can quote within range and say, hey, I need 100 megs to a gig here. Let me see my options. And you can use rules to define. It can be used. We're finding that the targeted speed is going to be much better. Multiple terms is fine. With broadband, I always say that carrier is tricky to figure out what and how they're presenting data. So picking your month-to-month or your 36 is your best option. Month-to-month should always be included with broadband. With broadband quotes, it should always be included, because somebody's going to sneak in something there. If you don't have it, you're going to end up with fallout that you weren't counting on. So that's key. Your Ethernet, it may be a completely different selection. The goal is that we are allowing each product to have its own configuration here. Your ability to come in and exclude providers and say, hey, this customer already has provider X, I need to exclude them. That's one less call we're making, one less result you got to weed through. The best part about all of it is, yes, we give you the granularity, I think, to go out and get detailed in your request, but we also recognize that most are not going to want to put all that time in for nothing, right? You don't want to have to repeat that every 5 minutes. So using templates to save and to share between teams gives you a quick ability to create 100 meg minimum option, for example, and just come in and pick up the template versus having to reconfigure. Now, if I need to change something, I could come in, quickly change this, change any option I needed, and then go submit that quote. So templates, learn to use the templates, use your little help guide up top for this, but it's a great way to eliminate all your requests coming through and having to configure each one. When we start to hit the quote process, this is where We've done a lot of speed tests. We're out there. Remember, we're going to the external APIs that you're tied into with the API credentials. We're going to all those carriers you're connected to through a cloud connection or internal Connectbase API that we've stood up. And we're looking at your imported or buildings rate cards that have been loaded to the instance. We're looking at the full picture, right? And so that generally takes time. Our goal is that we can turn those internal APIs in seconds, give you the external APIs as soon as they possibly can. Products are very specific there, right? Because they have their own limitations. It's going to be based on how they can quote each of those products. But rest assured, we have configured in a way to get the best we can from each carrier API. Your results here can change. So if you have 500 columns across this grid and you only need 20 of them, make sure you ask your CSM. We can limit the view based on user groups of which columns each group sees to make a very clean, succinct thought process, something simple that you can manage. For example, I took out of my view all my margin. There's margin applied, but only thing I'm seeing in this view as a sales rep is the total MRC, total NRC. But if I toggle to an internal admin view or my SE view or my quote desk view, I can see the margin. I can see whatever, basically you want them to see. So that's a huge benefit, is using those user groups to define and make this view much easier. From an API perspective, you're receiving the result, that payload. You can now pick and choose which pieces are important to build your user experience. Ultimately, sales engineers on our team will help you figure out what that looks like, how you would like to run with that. And then our support engineers will help when you run into issues, or if you have errors in that process when coding. The idea is to make it super simple, create the user experience for the right groups, and you can leverage an API to do that.
Hey, Carrie, I've been nudged that the sand is running through the hourglass.
Yes, we are coming to the end here. Okay. So the idea is that you have all your product services, you have your suppliers. What is in purple, though, is selected based on my rules. So vendor selection rules will come into play, automatically select or whatever rules you have, and then come forward. The product name itself is going to come from the carrier. So based on what they are providing, it's going to come forward. If there's NNIs built in with someone, you're going to see those come into play and represented here. And then install intervals and any notes that that carrier wants to present to you all come forward. This data can be exported, and it can even be imported, and you can come back and refresh it as long as 30, 60 days down the line you need refresh pricing. That's fine. Come in, refresh. We'll automatically audit that, so you can use audit logs for that view. Very important process. At the end of the day, once a quote is sent off, you've selected your vendors and you've been able to go ahead and submit this particular quote. In your WIP, you're going to see you as the user, all of your quotes. You're going to have that ability, me as a user, to go in and to select the shopping cart. If you've enabled order initiation with us, that order will go into an email, it'll go into your OSS, it'll go into order base, hint, hint, coming along. We're getting ready to release here, but it'll initiate into your order process, or just show you that there's an order conversion here. So you receive an email, your quote desk or your orders team has that email, and now you have something from an analytic thought process to continue with. From a global view, if you're with privilege and you want to see all quotes coming through the system, you can see those historically. You can come in and look at any quote anytime because you have the privilege at a global view to do so. A lot of great things here. We haven't talked about bid management, but we'll get into that. Your ability to engage with other suppliers, ask about ICP or the SPR pricing thought process to source out and overcome fallout. Network intelligence, another great way when you have, percentage of your locations not bidding or not sourced, you want to make sure that you have a path to overcome that. And that's going to be network intelligence and a mix with CBM, right? That bid management tool to engage carriers around that network. There's so many things we could go through today, but coming back to our slide here, gonna skip through. The key focus is how do we overcome fallout? Starts with location truth thought process as a foundation, validation, and then ultimately vendor selection rules and network intelligence. Buying with confidence. We know that we rely on the ability to buy with confidence. And when that's not there, we need to have a focus on that carrier. We need to understand what the issue is and be able to overcome that issue with very quickly, right? And with confidence. Increase sales efficiency between bulk quoting and scale to speed to market. All those things matter. So we need to be able to quote in bulk. We need to be able to bring those in a project view. And ultimately, we need to be able to put a proposal together in front of a customer so we can be the first and really increase our ability to win. We need to reduce sales cycle by 3 weeks to 3 days. Or if you're on a smaller quote, right, we need to be able to change that into a week to a day. The goal is to reduce how long it takes to get that proposal out in front and to be able to do it with confidence. We're here to enhance the customer satisfaction. We want to expand your business opportunities and ultimately maximize the profit that you have. So the goal is get with your CSM, get with us from a training perspective, anything we can do to support you. And if there's anything we talked about today that you're not leveraging, please get with us so we can review that with you. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Carrie. That was great. Every time I watch and listen to you demo, I learn more and more about the Connected World platform. I hope everyone was able to see how the Buyer Cloud can make your life easier and how it produces very, very tangible business outcomes. There are a couple more questions. We're out of time. I think we're beyond time. We'll get back to those questions one-on-one. Thank you for joining us today for a deeper dive into the Connectbase Buyer Cloud. We encourage you to share this webinar recording with your colleagues who can benefit from the platform and its capabilities. And as always, we value your feedback and input. Please continue to work closely with your customer success managers and let us know how we can help. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.